So this past week, Joe Biden effectively stated that you shouldn't vote for him if you believe Tara Reade. This is important, and it's very telling from a political standpoint. Yes, it seems like an idiotic political move for him to push pretty much anyone who was on the fence specifically about voting for the lesser of two predators, pushing them squarely into the believe women equals no vote camp. And it very possibly is just stupidity on his part. But this is also a presidential campaign. Biden doesn't make a statement if it's not approved by his advisors, who are mostly career Democratic operatives, and these are far from stupid people. You can imagine that most of these people would not have positions in a Bernie Sanders general election campaign, not like they would in any other at least. They allowed Biden to say what he said because many powerful Democrats' primary goal is to keep progressives out of the political process. When your vote is used well, establishment Democrats lose big. Case in point, AOC. Power in electoral politics is, to a large degree, a zero-sum game, because it's reflected by scarce positions in political office, seats in Congress, state legislatures, city councils, etc. When progressives use our voice to create power in the Democratic Party, the establishment loses some of theirs. Now, power in Democratic politics is an even more closed system. Why is this? There are two main reasons that I've observed. One, Democrats don't have blank check donors in the same way Republicans do. This is why the right is consistently able to astroturf so-called populist movements every few years, while keeping its big honchos well-funded. Big donors only donate to Democrats either A, as political philanthropy, or B, as a strategy of donating to all factions in power in order to maintain influence over everyone. In both cases, big money funding is both scarce and highly inelastic, which means they can't do much to get more or less funding, beyond simply maintaining relative power. The second reason is that Democrats' small-time donors are much more exclusive to the Democratic Party and typically never donate to Republicans. They will, however, donate to progressives, who demonstrate an ability to gain and curate power. Case in point again, AOC, but also every other progressive in Congress. Pramila Jayapal, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, Ro Khanna, etc., etc. This brings us to TLDR number 1. The primary threats to Democratic establishment fundraising are not Republicans, but progressives. Finally, Democratic operatives all have jobs in an establishment opposition, no less than they do when they gain majority power. The scenario in which they don't have power is in a Sanders presidency, or, as I mentioned earlier, in a Sanders general election campaign. This brings us to TLDR number 2. The primary threats to Democratic establishment staffing power are not Republicans, but progressives. So how does this relate to Joe Biden and his advisors letting him torpedo his own progressive turnout? Well, to answer this, we have to stipulate the Democratic establishment is not a monolith. Not everyone is the kind of political careerist described above. Joe Biden has demonstrated that his policy record is significantly amenable to the political environment surrounding his vote. In simpler words, Biden will make consequential, albeit minor, concessions on policy, given adequate pressure. This is a terrifying notion to establishment Democrats like Nancy Pelosi. It means progressives actually have a chance to influence Biden on policy and start gaining seats at the national table if we demonstrate ourselves to be considerable forces in the party's ecosystem. That's power that we can have that we would necessarily be taking away from the David Plouffes and the Rahm Emanuels of the world. If Biden loses, most Democrats are fine. They are largely white, privileged class people from overwhelmingly unmarginalized backgrounds whose positions in the party are secure. No, the Democratic Party is not going anywhere if they lose to Trump. A second Trump term, if anything, does wonders for their fundraising. They know that the left stands to lose far more to a second Trump term than they do, and they're perfectly okay with that. Roe v. Wade gets repealed? That's fundraising fuel for Democrats because they were always for Roe. It's those of us who wanted more who lose power. Good luck re-empowering Planned Parenthood without basic abortion rights. Good luck demilitarizing borders while trying to fight to reinstate DACA. Good luck passing Medicare for all while the same Republicans who eviscerated Obamacare by repealing the mandate are now using its failure as evidence that government-powered healthcare systems don't work. These are all power sources for establishment Democrats at the expense of progressives. For a huge number of these people, a second Trump term that they can blame on progressives is better than a Biden presidency that progressives can take partial credit for. They want to beat Trump, but only on their terms, to their benefit. This brings us to TLDR number 3. Career Democrats would rather Biden lose to Trump without progressives than beat Trump with us. It is more in their interest to deny us any power than to actually increase their own. I'm not specifically telling you how you individually should vote, because there are myriad considerations for you, individual voter, that I don't necessarily know. To demand that you vote tactically for Biden is to presume that your vote would do anything, i.e. that you vote in a swing state, that you're reasonably able to vote, and yes, this includes the emotional and physical ability of someone who has been subjected to something like sexual misconduct or the prison industrial complex, to vote for anyone who is accused of the former and an architect of the latter. And any other number of things that might influence your vote that I'm not privy to and don't have the right necessarily to judge. So, and this is my final TLDR, I'm not going to tell you how to vote. But what I will say is this: Biden was allowed to make a self-destructive statement by his advisors, who above all else want you and me not to vote for Joe Biden. Because the thing that threatens them most is not Trump. It's progressives gaining a seat at the table.